Well, good morning, everybody. So I titled my presentation "How to Profit from the Booming Lithium Markets." It's a very succinct presentation. As I've expressed this morning, we are focusing on producing strictly lithium hydroxide. So I warn you, I'm the president, I'm the founder. I'm very positive about this project, so I will be making forward-looking statements. All the numbers are subject to the 43-101 2014 and updated 2016 feasibility study to be filed next week. So all the numbers are from that. So very rapidly, what we are a hard rock lithium project based in the province of Quebec. We have developed over the course of the last 7 years what is now recognized as the second largest and richest reserve of spodumene. Make the difference between reserve and resources. I know everybody here knows about it, but we still have to educate people. Fully permitted. Finally got our permits back in September of 2015, so we're ready to build. We have decided back in 2011 that for the value of our shareholders would be better to, instead of only sending spodumene concentrate to the Chinese conversion facilities, would be a good idea to convert in Quebec, trying to get advantage of lower transport costs. While we were doing that, we realized that the world was evolving, the battery sector, lithium-ion battery sectors was evolving, and lithium hydroxide was going to become the lithium compound of choice with very little world capacity. So we said, okay, what advantage do we have in Quebec? Of course, first that pops up your mind is hydroelectricity, long-term, affordable hydroelectricity contracts. So 1 and 1 made 3. We decided to adapt a known, very long time known and proven technology, electrolysis, used in the chlor-alkali industry. Contrary to our friends at Neometal, we decided to modify the front end of it to convert sulfate solution instead of a chloride solution. So that's why we have a proprietary process on the feed material of the electrolysis. That allowed us to develop what is now would be the cleanest way of making lithium hydroxide or any lithium compounds, as a matter of fact, giving us a cost-leading advantage over anybody else, including the brine producers. And like I said, it's going to be the cleanest way of making it. One of the interesting aspects I did not mention earlier in the advantage of our company is that we've decided back in 2013 to hire and keep in-house a full technical team. No mining engineer, no geologists, but chemists and process engineers, so that we focus really on the value added, on the conversion. So very rare would you see that in a junior company. Our business plan is very simple. We also, as a world beggar, as a junior, no money, you always want to find ways of reducing your risk and reducing your dilution, but advancing your project. We realized a couple of years ago that even once in full production, we still would need to qualify the products. And that usually takes between 12 and sometimes up to 24 months once you're in full production. Well, when you think and you consider that it costs 5 to 7 million a month to run the mine, run the hydromet plant, that can be very expensive on top of the capex to build. So we decided one of the best approach was to build a phase 1 plant. By no means it's not a pilot plant, it's a phase 1 plant, the smallest commercial size plant we could design using the same membrane electrolysis cells, the same square footage of membranes that are going to be installed in the large commercial plant. The idea is to be able to engage clients while we're building the commercial mine and plant with commercial representative samples so that we can shorten, we hope, the period from 12 to maybe 3 up to 6 months. So therefore reducing by maybe $75 million to $100 million liquidity is required to really qualify your products. To do that, we decided that we would be building the phase 1 plant. The overall budget is $38 million, $25 million to build it, and 2 years of operation afterward. That was dictated by the initial request we made to Sustainable Development Technology Canada. Since it's a financial help that they gave us, they wanted to commercialize the technology. They wanted it to work for at least 2 years so that we prove to everybody that it works and it can be commercialized. So that's why 25 to build, 13 for the following 2 years of operation. We were able to finance this through obtaining $16 million of non-refundable grants, free money, no strings attached. $10 million of a private placement we just recently did with the Quebec government. And finally, like I mentioned this morning, we were able to secure an initial purchase order with Johnson Matthey Battery Materials for goods and services in the amount of $12 million to be paid upfront. That closes the overall $38 million. We also were able to secure an initial long-term supply agreement with Johnson Matthey for the commercial plant. Obviously, before putting their $12 million in, they definitively had a good, thorough due diligence review, technical and economical, because it's very nice to be able to make lithium hydroxide, but it has to be economical. So they convinced themselves and jumped right in. So we are currently filing the full 43-101 next week. We will then start engaging discussions for the project financing that we hope to be able to put in place by the end of 2016, with a vision of being in production by 2018, mid-2018. You're going to say, Guy, it's very, very too tight. I'll explain to you why we will be able to achieve that. As a reminder, very rapidly, mine and concentrator, about 300 kilometers north of Chibougamau, 3 hours or 300 kilometers of truck, then 500 kilometers of rail to Shawinigan. So, immediately to Shawinigan, we had to update the feasibility study of 2014 because we changed the location where we will be building the commercial plant and the phase 1 plant. We were fortunate enough to be approached by the city of Shawinigan that wanted to, I would say, reuse or bring somebody in the recently closed paper mill facility in Shawinigan. So this is photoshopped to show what buildings, existing buildings we're keeping, and here is where the existing buildings that we don't need are going to be demolished to the expense of the city. All the services that you need. We need 50 megawatt of electricity. So imagine directly hooked to the Hydro-Quebec power dam, water source, obviously, the rail, that's on our land. So the rail out, the rail in, natural gas, everything that you need is there. One of the interesting aspects of Shawinigan also, we only paid we will be over time paying $2 million for this. Saves us about $20 million from what we were supposed to build to start with. But more important, as a junior, it allows me to postpone a large project financing. It's impossible for me to go and build these 2 buildings without having the full project financing already in place. Here, because it exists, allows me to install immediately my phase 1 plant, allows me to keep the phase 1 plant up and running on a tooling services special dedicated line once the commercial plant is in operation. This is already stripped, already ready. We will start. Hydro-Quebec is hooking that in a couple of weeks, but we already have access, already starting to install the phase 1 plant, which should be up and running by the end of 2016. All of the paper machines in these 2 large buildings are going to be dismantled. Well, they are being dismantled as we speak. It will be finished by end of January of 2017. So immediately in February, I can start installing the equipment. So that's why I say it's an aggressive timeline, but it's made possible because the buildings are there and we have no problem with seasonability or financing ahead of the project. So rapidly, highlights of the feasibility. we can argue all day about the parameters. Are you okay with an exchange rate of 0.8? Are you okay with lithium hydroxide at 9,500 US, lithium carbonate at 7? Listening to the panel this morning, I think I'm overly conservative. I should use double-digit numbers. I think it's conservative. I think it's acceptable. But it makes good numbers. We still have 26-year mine life. We didn't change that. Payback 2.4 years. Net present value $1.2 billion after tax, 30% IRR. Still a capex around $550 million. 210 for the mine, 239 for the mine and concentrator, 310 for the hydromet plant in Shawinigan. But the real highlight of the feasibility study is the costs of the products. And I explained a little bit this morning, but I'll go into a little more details about the advantage we will always have over all of the lithium sector in China. Because as you heard, the lithium sector in China is fully dependent on importing raw material from Australia. So to start with, the concentrate cost at the mine is about the same as the Aussie dollars in Australia. So the ton of concentrate FOB mine would be similar. Where it's different, it's where it gets into the conversion facility. Our cost about 185 US. If you heard Anthony this morning, he's now talking about 600. My last numbers I have in CIF China entering the conversion capacity is around $485. So imagine at 6, I would be even more happy. But you have to remember, you have $300 advantage US, but it takes 7.5 tons of concentrate roughly to make 1 ton of lithium carbonate equivalent. So to start with, before you do any conversion, you have already $2,200 US minimum cost advantage that the Chinese will never be able to remove. So that gives us an advantage. The other advantage is that everybody else currently doing hydroxide is first making lithium carbonate. We decided by using the electrolysis and then reconverting in hydroxide, an added cost of about $1,000. We decided to go directly to hydroxide, so it cut our cost significantly. So just to tell you, if you go, this is provided by Roskill. It's the cash cost and overhead included, but cash cost in dark blue here of making lithium hydroxide, combined technical and battery grades. Last year, there was not more than 22% that was battery grade. So even with a combined cost, the recognized lowest cost of production of lithium units, SQM, were still close to $500 cheaper than them. If we were to compete on the battery grade, we would definitively be at least $1,000 cheaper than the SQM. So there might be an oversupply in 5 or 10 years from now, but the question is, when there's an oversupply, who gets thrown out? Definitively not the lowest cost of production. That's interesting, and for sake of time, I won't go into much detail. Here you see the cost of carbonate. Again, you need to understand what kind of carbonate or what purity of carbonate. This here, again, is combined technical and battery grades. You see, from the Chinese, the Tianqi, the other Chinese, their costs, we have a very big margin of advantage over these. This was based on $430 US CIF China for the spodumene. I'm talking 485. Anthony was talking about 600 earlier. So even at 430, their cost of concentrate, we have a very big margin that they will not be able to reduce. But what's important to really assess from this, it's still technical and battery grades lithium carbonate. Because of the process, because of the use of membrane electrolysis, because we did put a lot of effort of reducing the level of impurities in the feed material, what we get out of the process is 99.99% spodumene lithium carbonate. Just as an assessment, When battery-grade carbonate was selling for $5,000, 4.9s was selling for $13,000. A couple of weeks ago, somebody called me very desperately because he's using 99.99, low quantities, but nevertheless. So he never had supply agreement signed with anybody. Now he needs to purchase spot. So he was quoted a month and a half ago, $33,000 for his 4.9, when the battery grade was spot price around $18,000. So you see, even if rapidly you think that we are higher cost than SQM and Albemarle on their technical grade, we will always be lower than anybody else on the 99.9 to start with. So that's an interesting avenue. I didn't talk about the flexibility of our process, and we don't have the time to do that because of the schedule. But at will, we can adjust to either make hydroxide, monohydrate, or carbonate. So depending on how the market evolves and how the pricings and the needs of the market at a certain point, we have the flexibility with the process to address both. I won't go into because of the time, I don't go. So the conclusion, we're perfectly timed to enter the chain of supply. There is currently a shortage. It's going to increase the shortage. It's going to be terrible, in my opinion, for the next 3-4 years. And we're going to be one of the successful entering that. We have there's only 3 permitted projects around the world. We're the only one that is not locked with anybody. And so that gives us another value added. We have a leading advantage over our peers. Oh, I didn't mention, but we have been all the way supported by the Quebec government, different tax incentives, etc. But one point very important when we enter the discussion of the project financing is the newly relaunched Plan R program in Quebec with a $1 billion special fund earmarked to help develop natural resources north of the 49 parallel. We do qualify. They make direct equity investment in projects and or companies that are one single project that do qualify, up to 20% of the CapEx required to start. The last 20%, but nevertheless, the last is as important as the first. So that sums up very rapidly, and I'm already 7 minutes over my time. Sorry about this. Tracy, I'll take any questions. Thank you.